Hello, everyone. I'll probably start with a couple questions that people sent in during sign up. There's only 2 questions, so I'm going to take a little bit more time with the first one because it really covers a lot of basics for anyone who's very new to Grist. And then as I answer questions, hopefully more people will join as well. And feel free to post questions to the chat. I'll be looking at the chat periodically throughout the webinar. Okay, so the very first question was about how to use reference columns to relate data in 2 different tables, how to link widgets dynamically so that when you click on a selection, other widgets are updating on the page, and a little bit about choice columns, how to set up choice columns so that you can select from a limited colorful choice. So I have here the Lightweight CRM, which is a template from our gallery. That is, I like to think of it as the simplest example because what's happening is we're just looking at 2 tables. So I have here this exact same template, but with none of the dashboards set up. So we're gonna in today's webinar, we're gonna look at how to look under the hood of a document to see what's going on. But for the purposes of answering this question from sign up, I'll just let you know that there's 2 tables. There's a table of contacts, which has columns with contact information by company. And then there's a table of interactions. For each contact, there's some notes about an interaction, the type of interaction. And what we want to do is bring these 2 tables together to make this dashboard. So I'll start with the simplest thing, which is changing column formatting, which we'll also do throughout today's webinar. So this little icon in the top right is how you open and close what we call the creator panel, because normally in a Grist document, you sort of have the person who creates the dashboards and the layouts, and then the rest of the team benefits from all the work that they put in. And a lot of that creative functionality, that building, those building tools are in the creator panel. So in the creator panel, under column type, you can select the different column types that Grist offers. There is a column types webinar. All of our webinar recordings are on YouTube. So if you look up the Grist channel, there's a playlist for webinar recordings. So there's different types here like numeric, integer, toggle, date time, and then there's choice and choice list. This is how you create a cell where you can only choose from a predetermined list of values. So a choice lets you choose one, it's single select, and a choice list is multi-select. In this case, we want a single select. Because there were already values, Grist just sort of dedupes it, so we can just apply it. If you didn't already have values, if you were creating a new column, for example, and I were to make this a choice column, you would just go in here and type what those columns are in a new line, and you could just change the color. And we'll be doing that today as well in the webinar. So then once you have those choices, you can see those are my 2 choices over here. I don't need this column, it was just a little example. So that's how choice columns work. The next thing we want to do, it's each one of these interactions is related to a particular contact. And the column that's matching interaction here with a contact in this table is this column that's naming that contact. And the way that you create these relational links in Grist is through, again, you go to column type and you're looking at reference. So a reference is one-to-one. And a reference list is you can choose many. So if this interaction involved many contacts, you would do a reference list, but really it's just one. Each interaction is with one contact. So when configuring a reference column, you want to say what table are you referencing? So in this case, the only other table is contacts, though you can reference the same table. There's some use cases for that. And then when you are referencing a record or a row in another table, you're referencing the entire record and you're choosing which column to show. So I could do first name or last name or the contact's email or phone. These are all fields in the contact table. I'm just choosing the company name and I'm going to click apply. Now those 2 things are linked. Now Grist knows that these are related to Spora group over here. So with that, we can build these dashboards. So this is the very basics is once you have this relationship, we can start building on this page. So we're going to add new pages. What we call pages are these things on the left, just a little bit of terminology. So we're going to add things to this existing page that we have selected. So I want to add a widget to this page. And I could either select from an existing table we have, which is contacts or interactions, or I can create a new table. And we're going to do that later in the webinar as well. let's take advantage of the thing we just did, which was linking interactions to contacts to see what happens. So I'm going to click on interactions. And then this appeared down here called select by. This is how you do the dynamic linking in Grist. So because of that reference, Grist now knows when I select a particular contact, which interactions to show. That reference is what enabled this. So now when I click on these, if there's interactions, they'll show up. If there's no interactions, it's blank, but you could always enter one. And this makes for easy data entry. So on any of these, I could just come in here and I could start typing some notes. And you see it filled in the one that I already have selected. I could hide that column if I wanted to. I can select a type. So this new one that I just entered here, these nonsense notes, let's go back to interactions and you'll see it is in that table. So this dashboard's making that data entry nice and easy. It is going to the correct table. And then the other part of this, it's this nice card view. So right now, let me move this zoom toolbar out of the way. So right now, there's a lot of scrolling here and it's not very nice to read. So what we have in this example is we have this card that makes it easier to read all of those columns, but it is the same underlying table. So widgets on a page could be showing you the same data presented differently. With each widget, if you click on this little menu and you click on show raw data, it shows you what the underlying table is. So we can see here, it's that table of contacts. And in this widget, I can show raw data. It's the same thing. We're actually doing the same table. Why would we do that? To make it easier to read. So if I come back to this example where we're building the dashboard, I can add a new widget to this page. This time I want a card. I don't want a table, I want a card. And it's contacts. And again, Grist can link it to itself because it knows that a record related to itself, like it knows what to do with that, right? So that when I click on these, it's now updating that card. And all of this can be resized. If you hover on the left here, you can click and drag and put things wherever you want, wherever that makes sense. I'm going to put it over here is fine. And then within a card, if you select a card widget, there is also this edit card layout. You can find it in that menu or in the creator panel. There's an edit card layout button. And then you can even click and drag things here and put them in whatever format you want. And if you click an X, you're just hiding it. You're not deleting it from card view here. So maybe, I don't know, I want to hide notes. I don't really want to, but just to show you, notes is hidden. It's not actually deleted. And then over here, since I don't want this to scroll, I could just hide some columns. I could do that by selecting many columns and then hiding them, right click hide, or I sometimes like to come over here and then just basically bulk hide. You can also rearrange columns over here, which is sometimes nice if you have many, many, many columns and you don't want to scroll as you're dragging. So those are the basics of dynamic widgets, cards and tables, references, and choices, which are really, really useful. So this thing that we just did, you might notice that there's these formulas here. The full tutorial, if you go to support.getgrist.com, there's these 3 how-to tutorials. What we just did is like the first 2/3 of create your own CRM. So if you want to do it yourself with the same dummy data, nice and slowly, I strongly recommend this for the basics. And then the second question during sign up was about creating graphs. The second tutorial, Analyze and Visualize, focuses on graphs. And actually, let me show you real quick what you're building in that one. And it also gives you the dummy data, is this template, and we provide the dummy data. And what's nice about it is you see there's this kind of graph that is just showing you this breakdown overview, but it also teaches you how to do these dynamic graphs where when you click on a particular category, the charts update, which is really nice. So if you want to learn how to do that, support.getgrist.com, the second tutorial, Analyze and Visualize. And then the third one, it's basically just adding a bit of complexity, organizing, say, 5 tables into useful dashboards. Okay, before we start with the main meat of the webinar, are there any questions about this? Okay, so for today's webinar, what we're doing today, it's, let's say you find a template in our gallery that you really like, and now you want to modify it just a little bit to fit your organization or your project's particular needs. So we'll get through the browsing part. Let's say we found this task management template because we want to do some task management at our own company. What we see is there's a way to organize things in a weekly check-in. It shows who has been assigned to that, a description, attachments, looks pretty good by person. You can also click on each person that works at the company, see what their tasks are. There is one of those people is called backlog, and that's a way where you can see what is in the backlog, projects that haven't been assigned yet, but should be. And then tasks are also organized by project. You can click on a project and see what the related tasks are. This is pretty close to what we want with some light modifications. But sometimes just making those modifications can be daunting. So that's what we're going to look at today, sort of like a systematic approach to doing that. So we're happy with this. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to save a copy. You can rename it as you're saving it. I'll just call it project tasks. And then you can choose what organization you want it to go to. So personal, that's your docs.getgrist.com. And then there's team sites. These are the ones that have names. So it might be like acme.getgrist.com. It has a custom subdomain and a name. So here I have my personal one and two different team sites. I'm going for a totally real company. And then you can even choose a workspace. So I have a workspace called project management. There's also this option to copy it with the structure and without any of the data. So if you're good to go, you don't need the data in there and you just want to do data entry on a fresh template, it has all of the tables, the links, everything you need, but none of the data. I'm going to keep the data for now because it's going to help us understand this template and because deleting that data is really easy later. So let's make this copy. Okay. So as we click through these pages, we're looking at these different views. And one thing you'll see is this one has this widget that says tasks up here. That's that name of the table. Under by person, we also have tasks. That's repeating. Backlog has tasks. Project has tasks. So it can be a little overwhelming to figure out what are the actual tables in this document. And that's really the first place you should go is just what are my tables? And the best place to do that is to go to under tools on the bottom left, raw data has a list of your actual tables. As we saw, tasks seems to be the main table that's doing a lot of the work. So you can just click it. It opens up so you can click through it. And one of the things that I like to do is have the creator panel open to column. So as I'm looking at the columns, I get a little bit more information about what's going on in each one. So I can see by the symbol, this is a reference column. In the creator panel, I see, oh, it's linking to a table called weekly check-ins. It's showing me the date. Okay, great. This is a numeric column. It's prioritizing things. This is another reference column linking to people, a description, attachments. If you haven't seen attachments before, it lets you embed multimedia. Then the outcome, here we have a toggle column. Then we're linking to a table of projects. And then the very last one looks like a date, but I have a little more information here, which is there's a trigger column. If this is your first time encountering a trigger formula. A trigger formula, it's a formula that is only calculated on certain triggers, which means instead of always calculating, as you would expect, like in a spreadsheet, what it does is it's only happening either when you create a new record or when you make a particular change. So here it's triggering what is the time right now, whenever somebody makes a change to any of these columns in this row, so you can see when this task was last updated. We have a webinar all about trigger formulas as well. Okay, so that's the main table, and let's look at these other tables. I picked this one because it's very easy. So people just has one column of people, it's just text. Projects, one column, text, and then weekly check-ins, one column, dates. Very simple. All right, so now we're going to start modifying it. I'm going to go from simplest to adding a bit of complexity. So on the simplest end, it's just simple renaming. You can rename columns, widgets, tables, and pages. So what do I mean by that? Columns are columns. Pages are what's on the left. Whenever I say like tables, I usually mean the underlying data, that raw data that we were just looking at. And then widgets are the name that appear above each window. If you haven't set a widget title, it'll just be the table name, but you can override that, which we'll do in a second. So let's go ahead and rename a column. You can just double click into a header. So I'm just going to change this one to done, just to show you how to rename a column. We can rename a page, maybe by person. We want to rename, you can just double click in here as well. And we just want to do people. If you're on the page, it's just single click. So you open the page, or you could always just do it from the menu. So now let's go through that difference between widget and table. So if I click in here, you can see that there's the data table name. That's the data that that's in this widget, or the widget title. So I could change this data table name. So let's say I change this to dates and I save that. Because I don't have a widget title, it just says dates here. But the important thing is that in raw data, weekly check-ins change to dates, and so do the table ID. This is important, especially if you have like an API, you're connecting things, you're zapping things in. You need to know what the table ID names are. But I could override that if I wanted to. And the other thing you may have noticed is the page changed. If you haven't set a page name, it'll also just take that first table. And then maybe we'll just rename this in a second. So I can override the widget title. Maybe I just want to tell people to select the date. So in this case, I'm overriding it, but the actual table name is still dates. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this to weekly tasks. Okay, so that's how you rename things. The next thing we might want to do, it's any one of these pages. Maybe we want to get a little bit more juice out of it with just sort and filter. So in this weekly tasks page, maybe we want the people next to each other, like we go in order. And here we have some people whose tasks are like not next to each other. So we might just want to sort this. You can either sort through this icon, or you can right click to sort and filter. I'm going to sort alphabetically. So that's done. You'll notice that this button appeared up here. So if you save this, this is going to save that sort for the next time you come to this document, or if any of your team members come to this document. If you don't save it, then it's sort of like you're just doing it transiently for now, and you're not saving it for the next time you or somebody else comes to this document. So if you do want that to be a part of the view, you want to save it. Otherwise, you can revert. So I'm going to save it. Let's understand secondary sorts. So if we go to the projects page, it's kind of hard to parse this right now, what's going on, what's important, what's been done, what hasn't been done. So maybe we want to sort first by whether or not it's done, keep everything that's done together. Okay, that looks pretty good. And then after, we want to sort by priority. And in this case, I want to add it as a secondary sort from high to low. And I'm going to save that as well. So it's giving me the things that are not done by priority, just in descending, and then after that, what has been done. The reason, if you open this, you can see what your sort columns are. Notice what happens if I switch this. It doesn't make a lot of sense because it does them in the order, right? That you see it stacked there. If it does it by priority first, it's doing the sixes first, and then whether or not it's done. So the order there does matter. So I'm going to revert to what I had before. But you can see that I could just click and drag this. So if you ever did it in the wrong order, it's an easy fix. And the next thing is going to be filtering. So I come over to this table because I already know that this table is filtering by whether or not the person. So you can see here, there's a person, whether it should only show me people in the backlog, or that the task is assigned to backlog. That's why I'm only seeing backlog tasks here. I can add another filter because maybe sometimes I want to drill into this by project. You'll notice that this time a button appeared. The way that you toggle those buttons, which is for convenience, is with these pins. So sometimes you may not want to have a pin. So for example, here, we always want it to only show backlog. This page is called backlog. We don't want a big convenient way to change the person. The person should always be backlog. So I don't create a pin, but I do want people to be able to drill into the project. And here I just have it saved as all. So every time someone comes here, they'll see these buttons and they can quickly just do that search, and they can just revert it. If they don't have full schema permissions, which is an access rule thing, there's a webinar about that, they won't be able to save it. So only owners or editors with that permission can save a filter for everyone else. Somebody that doesn't have that permission could do like a transient filter, but not save it for everyone. Okay, I'll pause here before continuing in case there's any questions. And you could put questions in the chat. Or you can just say hi. Yay, thank you, Jonathan. Okay. So we've renamed things. We've, of course, and we've modified some existing views with sort and filter. Now let's look at column formatting. So if we go back to tasks here, each task has one person. So this is a reference column saying that this task is related to a person in the people table. But maybe there could be more than one person working on a task. So what if we change this column type to a reference list so we can have more than one assignee? Same thing, it's the people table. We're showing names. Let's apply. So let's say we did want to add another person to a particular task. So let's say here, Aaron is going to work with Cody on this. So the task is build welcome dialog UI for ABC. I wanted to highlight that so you see what happens when we go to by people. So Cody still has that, and Aaron also has that. So it's being assigned to both of them now. So you can just change column formatting, but that's a very useful one. Maybe we also want to add columns. So maybe in this table, we want to also organize things by departments. So let's go ahead and I right-clicked on the column to open this menu, and I want to insert a column to the left to add departments. And I'm choosing from a predefined list of departments. I could have a table of departments and I create a reference, or in this case, it's not going to change very often. Not many other things are going to link to it. It could just be a choice list. So I'm just going to make a choice list. So the column type is going to be a choice list. Lets me select more than one. In this case, I only want one choice. I'm going to configure the columns. I'm copying and pasting from somewhere else. You can do that, which is nice and helpful. And then you click this little T to change the colors. So I'm just going to do that quickly. And then save. So then I can go in here and start filling some of these in. A quick tip, if you select a particular range like this, and you use the shortcut Control-D, it takes the value at the top of the range and fills in the rest of it. Here I might do UI UX, use that same shortcut. Here I'm going to do dev. You can also just copy and paste into multiple ranges. And then this one is interview candidates. Well, I don't know, I'll call it ops. Okay, so I filled in some of these departments. Oh, and you can also rename. So let's say you wanted to change this to, oh, it's not really ops, it's people, and you change that, it applies that change in the document. Okay. Let's add one more column in this projects table, because here we have a list of projects, but there's no sense of priority here. And maybe here's just a yes, no. Is this a high priority or not? Yes or no. So let's just add priority. And for a simple yes, no, we have a toggle column that could be formatted as text, a checkbox, or a switch. I like the switches because when you click them, it's more colorful and you can change that color as well if you wanted to. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we have this here. So now when I'm looking at weekly tasks, maybe it'd be helpful if I could see at a glance without having to scroll which one of these tasks belong to a project that has a priority. So this is where we get into something like conditional row style. So now when you're thinking about your views, you're just thinking, how can I use color to very quickly at a glance get information and be very productive? So what I want here is to highlight the entire row if it's a priority project. So this is something that applies to the whole table. And under widget, there's this option to add a row style, a conditional row style. So what I want to do here is this projects column is a reference column. That means it's referencing the entire record in the projects table, this entire record. So it knows what's happening in both columns. So if you haven't encountered this before, there's something called a reference lookup. So what that means, this is a reference column. So I named the reference column. So you do a $ to call on a column in a formula. So I put in the reference column's ID, $ project. Then I hit period to drill in, and then it's serving up for me in the autocomplete the fields in that other table, in the project table. Remember there was two, the project or the priority, and then every record has an ID. If you do $ID, like you'll see the actual ID of a record. So what I want is if the priority equals true, and in Python, 2 equal signs for comparison, 1 equal sign to define something. So here we're doing a comparison. If it's true, then I want you to highlight the whole row a particular color. Okay, so a lot of Neptune tasks, but some of these are done, so that's not super helpful. We can add another conditional row style. They go in order. So the next conditional row style one, if it's done though, then let's just make that one green. So this one's even simpler. This is just going to be, if the column done, the one that's in this table right here, if that equals true, we want a capital T, the way that it was auto-completing, then highlight it in green. So yellow, it's unassigned and priority. Green, it's done regardless of project. So this is how you can use conditional row styles to bring things up at a glance. And this applies anywhere that there are tasks. So here, there's no done tasks in backlog because of the sort and filter. Or maybe there's just, yeah, but you can see what, there's no done task assigned to backlog is what I should say. Backlog doesn't have any done tasks. Somebody did it. Backlog doesn't exist. But here we have, we're highlighting which tasks are in priority projects. Okay. So now we're going to take it to the next level of complexity, which is what if we wanted to add a whole new table to an existing page dynamically linked with a reference? Great. So maybe with each one of these projects, there's references like resources. There's resources, there's links, there's a design file somewhere, there's some research somewhere else, there's some documentation somewhere, and multiple resources can be related to a particular project. So it sounds like we need a table of resources referencing projects. So in this table, I'm going to add new, a widget to this existing page, and I'm creating a new table. I'm going to name it resources. And I'm going to start defining what these columns are. So this first one, I'm keeping it simple. You can also import, but I'm just creating from scratch. So I'm doing a name, maybe I have a URL somewhere, and then I need to know what project it's related to. So in the creator panel, I can start formatting this. You can switch, the two main tabs are table for the whole widget, column. So in column, these first two are text, and this third one we said is going to be a reference to the projects table, and I want to see the project name. So what happens when I don't already have it filled in? It's showing me the projects that I can choose from. So let's go ahead and just fill something in. So let's just say like this is homepage. I'm just going to put in a URL, which is our site, Grist, and then the project it's going to be Neptune. So we just created a table and we related it to another table. We haven't linked it yet. When I click on this widget is linked, but this one down here is not. Usually the flow when you're linking something, you typically like you're adding something like tasks, and then you're selecting how to link it. But if you've already created a widget, there's another way to do that, which is in table, data, there's this select by section. So as you've selected the widget, you can go in here and update that. And now it's going to update. We only have the one for Neptune. And normally the way that you select whether it's a card or a table is as you're adding, you'll select a card. You can also change a widget once it already exists. Similarly, in the creator panel under table, widget, change widget, I'm going to do a card list. So it's a card, but it shows you everything sort of in order. I'm going to save that. I'm going to move it under here. Task is a lot longer. So I could add a second resource here and then fills in Neptune, or I can come over here and fill in a resource. And it's filled in recruiting. So we did it. We added a whole new table to an existing page linked to an existing table with dynamic linking, and it's a card list. By the way, if you haven't noticed this before, cards, both cards and card lists, there's these three sort of themes. There's this form, which is the default one, compact, and blocks. So you can change how it looks. And if you missed it at the beginning of the webinar, you can always edit card layout and move things around if you want. What does dynamic linking mean again versus, I really mean linking widgets. So then let's take a step back. Remember that before I had this selected between the widgets, I'm seeing everything. I'm seeing the records that are, let's actually go to table to make this easier to look at. Let's change this back to a table. So here, when I click on Neptune or recruiting or mobile or UI UX, nothing is updating down here. Grist knows which one of these records are related to which one of these records because of this column. This reference column says these two belong to Neptune, this one recruiting, but I haven't done the select by, and that's normally what we mean by linking widgets. So it's not really a reference. It's using the reference to create that dynamic link. And if you missed the beginning, remember in this one here, we're making this link and it isn't two tables with a reference, it's the same table, right? We're going to do another type of linking a little later in this webinar, but basically anytime you're linking widgets, it could be across a reference, it could be the same record in the same table, it could be records being summarized by a pivot table. That's what we call the dynamic linking. And then this is a reference. Okay, so we'll go back to selecting so that now it's updating as I click through. Did that clear it up, Sarah? Another way to think about it. Okay, great. Awesome. Okay. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to create a whole new page. So we have these 4 pages, and maybe now we want a new page, which is what if we wanted to look at tasks by department? So we could have a table of departments, and then each task links to a record in the department table. So picture a table with dev, UI, UX, people. We could link each one of those to that, or with something very simple like this. I'm going to show you another way to do it. And sometimes it enables different things. So I'm going to add a whole new page. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take tasks and I'm going to summarize. So whenever you want to create a pivot table, you use this. There is a webinar about summary tables, and there's a summary tables video playlist that's like a series of shorter videos on YouTube as well. If you just summarize and don't group by anything, it summarizes the entire table. Or you can group by certain columns, like in a pivot table, you can have like the subtotals. So let's say we're doing it by department. So why am I doing it by department? Basically, I just wanted to dedupe that. I just wanted to dedupe the fact that it's, I'm just putting it into categories. And what it's saying, we only assigned a few of them. There's 7 tasks in dev, there's 2 in UI UX, 1 in people, and there's 38 that basically haven't been assigned a department. There's some default behavior that pivot tables do. One of them is just count. It's counting how many are in each group, as I just said. The second thing is it automatically sums any numeric column. That isn't always useful. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you just want to sum. In this case, it's not. Priority shouldn't be stacking that way. If you wanted to create an average, you could just go in here and change this to average. And then it would do the average instead. And you could put, your max number of decimals. There's a lot of formatting here for numeric. It still doesn't make sense with priority. I don't know if the average priority matters. So I'm just going to delete this column. But now I'm going to do another type of widget linking, which is so when looking at a widget, you'll know it's a summary table by the symbol, the sigma icon, and in raw data, you'll see that it added a new table with the sigma icon, which means that it's a summary table. So what I can do here is now I will add a widget to this page, which is tasks linked by the summary table. So you can link the underlying table that is being summed to the summary table. You can also link some summary tables to each other. That's in the summary table guide. So as I click through here, you can see that it's updating based on, here's the 7 that are in dev, the 2 that are in UI UX. I don't like the column order here. So I'm going to go to table, widget, and I'm going to just rearrange it here instead of clicking and dragging and scrolling. So maybe I want the check-in first, then I want the department, person, description. So I'm just sort of doing this kind of quickly and roughly. So it looks a little bit better. And let's see what happens if I start assigning these. So if I go and I make this one, also dev, you can see that the numbers changed and it's now over here. I didn't really look at which one it was, but it's moved. So So you could go through and do that, or you can switch an existing one and you're going to see the same behavior. It'll move, and that one disappeared until I create a new one with people, and then it will come back. So it's always summarizing what actually exists. So if there's 0, it's not going to appear. And if I create something new, so you can create, let me actually undo it for a second. I could add a new option right here and save, or I could do it right down here if I wanted to. And then you can see it added that new one here. So it's summarizing all of those choices in that summary table. Okay. Any questions about this? Okay. There's also something else that's useful about this, which I'll do at the end if we have some time. Okay, so we have this now in a state that we like. Oh, wait, no, we don't. We need to change this page name. It's not a good page name. So I'm just going to go just department tasks. There we go. Now we're happy with it. So this is all made up data from the template. This is all dummy data. If you wanted a quick and dirty way to delete, the way that I usually do it is I just go into the tables, select the whole thing, right click, the context menu, and then delete all the rows. So you don't delete the columns or anything else. So let's see what that looks like. You do this for all tables, not summary tables. Summary tables are formulas that are summarizing an underlying table. You don't need to touch those. So just the actual data tables. There are shortcuts. Like you can see the shortcuts for deleting as well. Okay. Did I do them all? I was moving very quickly. Nope. Maybe in this case, I'll keep backlog. Okay. Projects is gone, resources are gone, and tasks are gone. So now what does this document look like now that I deleted all that data? It pretty much looks like what would happen. Remember in the beginning when you could save a copy, just the structure without any data? It pretty much looks like this. The only thing we have right now is this person. So let's start filling things in. I'm going to put in today's date. I'm going to say it's a biz dev task. We have Casey. I'm adding it. This is a reference. And I'm going to show you what's happening elsewhere in the document. It's Casey. She is going to start the business. It's day 1. The project is a project called launch because we need to launch the business. Day 1. So let's see what happened in some of the other views. People, we now have Casey with her 1 task, and backlog has no tasks. Backlog continues to have no tasks. In projects, we have 1. We have launch. There's no resources yet. And then department tasks, we just have the 1 biz dev task. So that's how things filter out. And if we go to the raw, so that's looking at all of the views just to confirm that we know what's happening. We can go to raw data. So what would you expect to see in dates? It should just be the 1 date that I just entered, today's date. Under people, should be Casey and backlog. Under projects, just launch. Resources, none. We deleted everything, we didn't add any. And under tasks, just that 1 task that we entered. And then you just fill it in with this workflow. That's it. That's how you modify templates. Just to review, so the way that I would go about it, it's first look at raw data, see what your tables are, understand the references between them, look at any formulas, then rename, just simple renaming columns, pages, which is this what's on the left, widgets, which are the windows, and then tables, which is the data table. Then you want to look at sort and filter, make sure you're getting the views that you want, any column formatting, changing things to choices, changing references to reference lists, add any columns that you need, add any conditional row styles or column styles. A column style will just like do a single cell if it meets the condition rather than the entire row. So you could add row styles here, or you could add cell styles. So if you don't want the whole row to light up. And then we learned how to add any new tables like this one, any dynamic linking, and new pages. So I would build from simplest to hardest in that way. Okay, any questions? Okay, I'm going to show you that one quick tip that I had mentioned. let's say you had like a bunch of different departments. I'm just gonna, these were still here from, but why are these still here? Because it was a part of the choices, right? It's a part of the choices. It's not an actual value in a record. I'm just gonna add a bunch of these. Okay. So let's say you one day imported something into Grist that looked like the tasks table, and you had a bunch of departments and you have hundreds of rows and you don't even know what all of the departments are. You just got this, it could be anything, departments, countries, states, cities, a bunch of them are repeated and some of them aren't. And you wanted a quick way to dedupe it. One of the ways to do that, it's on a new page, take your tasks, group by the thing that you're trying to dedupe, like department. And then what you can do is under table data, if you detach, it's no longer a summary table. So it's no longer looking at the underlying table and updating as you add new records or delete records. These numbers are not going to change, but you got your dedupe list. So neat trick. And another thing, if you're really new and you're working in a new template and maybe it has some formulas that are kind of scary and you're afraid of messing something up or losing something, under the share icon, there's something called work on a copy. If you work on a copy, what it does is it creates an unsaved version of it, and you can make all of your changes in this unsaved version without affecting the version that you do have saved. You can do this for any document that you have. And then if you messed up, and you don't want this, you can just return to the original like nothing happened. Or if you're happy with your changes, you can replace the original. So I'm just going to return. And if you really mess up and you weren't working on a copy, there is this thing called document history. This is where your automatic backups. You can see it was taking it every few minutes. It'll start keeping things like as of a few days ago, a few weeks ago, months ago. As you go further back in time, it's a little less frequent, but it keeps snapshots years old as well. It's on the pricing plans as well, how old it keeps it. So that what you would do is in this 3-dot menu, you would open that snapshot, see if it has what you need. So this is after I deleted everything. Then you could say back to current, or I did that quickly. Let me go back to the snapshot. With this, you can say replace the current version if you want to restore, like if you really messed up and you want to restore from backup. Or you could just save a copy. Maybe you just want to back up an old version for whatever reason. You can save that copy without affecting the document you're working on. You can export it, or you can always return to your current version. Okay, any other questions? I wish Zoom would say if someone was typing. I see someone just joined, but it's the end of the webinar. But this recording will be on YouTube. And everyone who registered will receive a link to the YouTube recording. Okay, well, if there's no questions, thank you for joining. And I hope this helped. Bye.